Good morning. It is 6:03 a.m. on Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, recording this much earlier than I have been typically in the last little bit, partly just because I have to get up early today. I have an appointment that requires me to get up and out of the house much earlier than I have been. I mean, I've had the good fortune, if you want to call it that, to be working from home recently. But sometimes you still need to leave the house, and so today is one of those days where I have to get all showered and ready and everything in time to actually any of you just listening and not looking at the screen would have missed a very explanatory hand gesture just then. But, here I am. I can do it. Ha! I am able to get up early sometimes. Woo! We recorded Beyond the Wall last night, and boy, that latest episode of Game of Thrones, without spoiling it, I guess, because it's still a little early for that, but I hadn't been feeling as negative about it until I kind of just started talking through it with everyone, and boy, there's just a lot of problems we had with that episode. And it doesn't feel good for us, like we're a podcast that we're usually very, very positive on the show, generally. We're the sort of group that when someone is being grumpy and unwilling to let things go, we give it a 7 or 8 out of 10. Whereas last night, we were all pretty low, much lower than that. And it was definitely our collectively lowest rated episode of the series. But I was kind of a little bit surprised to have us so negative, and yet that's just kind of where we came down when we were talking through it. But I want to talk about how endings are not easy. And so in some respects I have a lot of empathy for the showrunners. If set a pretty extreme challenge for themselves here. They have a very complex show, and not everybody likes the show for the same reasons, and not everybody likes the same characters, and they're working on trying to wrap up something that has been so long running and complicated. That's not easy to do. If you think of it's just, there's a lot of TV shows that kind of falter towards the end. But one of the things that I discussed last night that I really feel kind of strongly is that I recall the endings of Lost and Battlestar Galactica. And those were shows where a lot of people didn't like the ending, whereas I enjoyed it, both endings. Now, what is definitely true about the endings of both of those shows is that they basically dispense with a whole lot of the show's built-up mythology and just kind of hand wave it away in favor of trying to have solid emotional beats to resolve each character. Instead of focusing on wrapping up the plot questions, they focus on the character stuff. And a lot of people really were frustrated because they felt like they really wanted to see resolution on all of those character pieces, on all of those plot pieces, So on Lost, people wanted to know, what's the deal, with the island, the good and evil, who are these guys, like all of those details. The polar bear, right? Everyone harps on the polar bear when it became clear pretty early on that a lot of those details, like, well, the polar bear for one is one of those where everyone mentions that, even though technically they did actually explain that. In any event, though, so like the problem was people wanted there to be some complex plot-driven finale. And then same for Battlestar Galactica. Now, to some extent, the showrunners of those shows set that expectation up. Like the people who made Lost promised people that they had a conclusive answer. In Battlestar Galactica, the whole show opened up with the Cylons have a plan all this time, right? And so to not follow through on those issues in favor of the characters was something that frustrated a lot of people, but for me personally still worked because it was the characters I was invested in. Whereas what seems to be happening so far this season of Game of Thrones is that they have specific plot resolution in mind. And as a result, they are contorting the characters in order to fit that plot destination. And in some cases, so Mark in the comments, hello, says the Cylons had a plan, the writers didn't. Well, yeah, exactly. And so that's the same in Lost, is that, they said, oh yeah, we've got it all worked out. But surely what that meant is that they have sort of a vague concept worked out, and then turns out the details are messy, right? And so, but in Game of Thrones here, what they seem to be doing is they're going to contort all the characters in order to get them to do what their plot requires. And in some cases, they're trying to just wring all the drama they can out of those decisions instead of just letting it be a bit more organic. And I can understand the impulse because they're trying to avoid what made everybody so mad about Lost and Battlestar Galactica. But in doing so, they're making me mad. I mean, not that they're supposed to cater to me specifically, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so I can't help but wonder as a result, are the people who, well, I don't know, because I suppose it's still all about execution. I was going to say, are the people who were mad about character prioritized over plot in those other shows, are they going to be happy with this one? But, the answer so far based on this last episode seems to be no. But I think that nonetheless, it's a challenge, and I feel like I have empathy for the showrunners in that this is very difficult, and probably there is no ending they could lead to at all that would make everybody happy. But so far, this season I was enjoying it, and for the most part, but this last episode, whoo boy, all right. Anyway, I've got to finish getting ready for work, so I'm going to leave it here. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Remember, the pre-orders are now open for my book, Phyllis Esposito, Interdimensional Private Eye. You can find all the details for that at christianaellis.com. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.